Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Smart Sourcing, the first edition of the Smart Sourcing Summit webinar series. I'd like to welcome every one of you here today who have made time to attend this event today. I know, despite your busy schedule and also the first day of announcing everyone can get back to work today, right? So thank you. I would like to request that everyone mute your uh, audio as well as your videos, right? So that we can have smooth operation of the event today. Welcome to everyone. First and foremost to Chairman Chia, the Chairman of OM, and also the organizing chair, Mr. Raymond Devadas, who had also made it possible to have this event to take place. And not forgetting our distinguished panelists, and our moderator who have also joined us today to make this event, this webinar, a meaningful one for us. Yeah. So before I hand over the session to Caroline and also this panelists, a couple of house rules here that we need to maintain is that please mute your video and audio at all times. Should you have any questions, please post it into the chat section in your panel that you will see, and we will attend to your questions as soon as we can, right? Caroline will actually pick up those questions and actually address those questions to the speakers. Apart from that, we also discourage any form of, I know we run some businesses that we like to, push our products or services, but this platform is purely for us to actually engage with our speakers to get the best from them, yeah? So I would suggest that please do not post that through post-it. We'll actually remove that from the chat. So please continue engaging with us. We love to hear your thoughts, your voices, but let's hear it from the panel themselves. I will pass on the platform to Caroline to take it over from here. Over to you, Caroline.
Thank you, Justin. Welcome everyone to the maiden Smart Sourcing webinar series, and the title of this webinar series is The New World Order Post-COVID-19. So this Smart Sourcing Summit is organized by OM, of course, or formerly known as Outsourcing Malaysia, a chapter of PICOM, and is an initiative of the Global Business Services Industry, or GBS. Now, this summit is also supported by MDEC, or Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation. So first of all, I'd like to welcome you and make sure that we all can hear each other well. Could you give all the panelists as well as myself a thumbs up or a hello in the chat box to make sure that you can hear us well?
Hello.
Hi, thank you. Yeah,
Hello.
Thank you. Do utilize the chat box as much as possible so that we are able to focus. Right, let's get started then. Now, my name is Caroline and I'm the Country General Manager for Leadronomic Services Malaysia. We are building leaders in Malaysia, and that's all I want to say for now. I will be your moderator for today, and I would like to join you together to welcome our distinguished guests, panelists today. Now, our guests today, they are very special because they represent a whole ecosystem, almost a whole ecosystem, from the young students to the international GBS and human capital consulting firms to drive digital transformation and adoption. And so we have both sides. We have the supply and then we have the demand. So we have all these panelists and really want to listen to their views and their inputs, as well as our collective wisdom together. And how that will be is really, we need you to engage with us by typing in the chat box any views that you have or any questions that you have, so that we are able to address as many as possible. And we really want to talk about, what lies ahead. What is the changeover that we are seeing? Has things completely changed, or are there things that we can build on from the past, into continuing on into the future? So I really would like to encourage you to chime in on the chat box. There will be also some polls here and there. So when the polls come up, we'll also like to hear your inputs. Right, so without further ado, I'd like to invite us to get to know our panelists. And how we're going to do that is we're going to ask them for a quick introduction of themselves and who are they. We will ask for the introduction from each panelist according to this order. We have first Anthony Raja Devadas, who is the Asia Pacific Managing Director and Regional Head at Purcell Kelly Consulting. Anthony, would you like to start a 2 minutes introduction?
Thank you, Caroline. I hope all of you can hear me. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining our first maiden webinar services. So I'm glad to connect with all of you. My remit covers the regional business across 13 countries, across different cultures, different businesses related to business services segments, predominantly on the talent workforce solutions in APAC. Thanks, Caroline.
Thanks, Anthony. Hugh Wee Cheong, he's the Vice President of Investment and Industry Development at MDEC. Hugh, would you like to join us and give us a quick introduction of yourself, Hugh?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm in charge of investment development in Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, or MDEC. Being the specialist investment promotion agency for digital economy, we focus on connecting the dots for companies investing or setting up digital-related operation in Malaysia, including digital tech development or digital business services.
Connecting the dots. Thank you, Hugh. That's very much needed today. And we'd like to connect the dot now to Datuk Munira. So Datuk Munira is the founder and president and CEO at Brand International. Can I invite you, Munira?
Hi, Caroline. Thanks for the introduction. I like it. Gentlemen first and then ladies second. In as far as introduction is concerned, anyway. So Munira, I'm the CEO as well as the founder of Brand International. We are primarily a mid-sized BPO company, and we offer customer management as well as HR outsourced services. And the markets that we currently serve are primarily very much in the regional. So I'm very glad to be in this panel. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Munira. And yes, we have another lady joining us now. Yeah, so we let the gentlemen have the way first. And the ladies are behind supporting, you know.
Yes.
So we have Miss Tan Lina. She's the CEO at Inti Universal Holdings Sendirian Berhad. Lina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you for having me here. And thank you to all the audience for joining us today. Right, so I'm Lina. I'm the CEO of Inti International University and Colleges. For those who may not know much about us, we are one university and 5 colleges with campuses in Subang, Nilai, Penang, Sabah, and KL. Right, so our vision is to reinvent education. Right? And we say reinvent education because we want to ensure that we are building our students' futures now. So it's very much tech focused, and we believe very much in working with industry in order to deliver grads who are future proof. On another note, our group runs a captive GBS, which covers finance, HR, IT, procurement, legal, and student analytics.
Thank you, Lina. Thank you. So as you can see, we have a very interesting group of people, and I do have to say, we met on Saturday, and I'm looking really forward to speaking and to hear from each individual here because they bring such a lot of different experiences to share. So we'd like to get started, and how we're going to do this is primarily we would hear from different contributions in terms of panelists, but of course feel free to chip in if you feel that there is something that you'd like to add to the conversation. So perhaps to start off, we will ask the gentleman, this question.
Oops, I started this, right?
All right, so we'll start with Hugh and Anthony. So Hugh and Anthony, maybe starting with Hugh and then followed by Anthony. So COVID-19, this is really a situation that I think nobody anticipated, right? And the impacts are being widely analyzed right now at a global level. And it is said that this is worse than the Great Depression. Yeah. So for Malaysia and for GBS, do you see any pockets of opportunities arising from this, whether it's short term or long term? You know, when it is said to be greater than the Great Depression, yeah, do you have views on this that you can share with us? Thank you.
Sure. So let me be the gentleman to take the lead here. Uh, Malaysia, as like any countries in the world, has been greatly affected by COVID-19, be it in the government, business, or even in the community, as what we would have seen so far. So zooming into GBS, we have witnessed during this MCO that Malaysia GBS industry has been very resilient, particularly due to the work from home capability enabled by the digital infrastructure that we have, but also due to the agile business continuity plan that industry players have, which have been put to test this time around. We have also observed a survey that showed GBS will be more important moving forward post-COVID-19, actually. With this, we see opportunities for the GBS industry. That's the good news. With interest from companies planning to move or outsource activities to Malaysia. So do look out for that. And of course, do note that there will be already redundancy of talent in the hospitality industry, be it in the tourism, in the hotel industry, or in the airline industry for that matter. We know there will be casualties as part of this COVID-19 pandemic. So these are service-oriented talent, proficient in English and any other languages that can be reskilled for the GBS industry. So these are the opportunities that we see for now.
Thank you, Hugh. It sounds like while it is greater than Great Depression, both Malaysia readiness in terms of its talents, as well as pockets of opportunity to recruit better talents and more talent is still there. Let's hear from Anthony. Do you see that as well, or perhaps other things, Anthony, that you are also seeing? Thank you, Hugh.
Hi, Caroline, and thanks to Hugh's input. I'll just queue up from there. And I had actually coined a terminology called resilient, R, A for agility, V for virtual, E for engaged. So I know raving is rave, you know what's the meaning, right? Shouting and extremely, it's like an outcome of what's happening or challenges. So I chose these words because, of course, there are a lot of words out there being used, but these are really practical ones, right? Being resilient is something we learned as we came out of this. We survived this. And of course, today we are back to work. Almost all the industries are coming back to work. And I remember our chair for the SSS, Raymond, asking, should we do this session today? I said, it's perfectly time to do it today. I think everyone wants to know what's happening, right? And agility, I think, is also a good responsiveness as an industry. And both BPO and GBS has shown agility. They have made that movement work. I still remember in our council when we heard companies come out and say we can make it happen, but we just needed to make sure we have the right support within compliance, within governance, that we have to get it done. And of course, following the MKN requirements as well. Yeah. And I say virtual because we are today connected virtually far more than ever before. And I believe stats has shown that what used to be just a relationship face-to-face culture, we have evolved now into a virtual culture. Now I'm trying to relate each of these aspects into this, and finally is engaged. We are connected to each other in a more, of course, Malaysians everyone has got two phones, like two cars. So, they're well connected worldwide. I think by far one of the most well-connected society, I would say. So they can bridge and move forward. So if I were to look at talent, adjusting, I think applying all of these principles, there's something called portable skills or transferability of skills. And I know later on, maybe Lena will be sharing something about how the students are looking at, but I'm also talking about the existing workforce, which is impacted. How do they shift the gear, in the new gear, in the new normal, in the new structure, into the new role? And GBS has the avenue to create high volume career opportunities for such talent. And hopefully we can do a bridging and then connect this group so that those who are impacted in a way which is negative but can be positively impacted by GBS industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. It sounds like the both of you at this time see see there are pockets of opportunity, but I'm not sure. And let's hear from the audience whether they see the same. So there will be a poll coming up to ask you for your views on this. Justin, can we have the poll up?
While we have the poll, Caroline, can I say something as well?
Sure,
Yeah,
sure, Munira.
I guess to just write on to what Hugh and Anthony has also mentioned, perhaps we can also look at a much bigger perspective in terms of the other global BPO players that's in the region. We specifically, primarily, if you just look at India and Philippines, their BPO business or even the GBS setup are very large, very large scale, and due to the COVID-19. They were facing with very huge challenges. They will negatively impact in terms of how to arrange and manage remote working, of the entire workforce, because their workforce we are talking about in terms of thousands, right? And the worst thing, of course, is that most of this India and Philippines, most of the workforce are living in housings which has poor quality broadbands, and that actually has impacted the ability to actually offer or meet the necessary service level to the clients in this case here. So I think taking that cue with what has mentioned by Hugh just now, I think we should ride the wave at this point and particularly position Malaysia as the alternative options for BPO as well as GPS industries. So we need to ride the wave at this point because we are ready for it.
Thank you, Munira.
Yeah.
So it's very heartening, right, that we do have what it takes. Let us grab the opportunity and not just be sitting ducks, right? And let's see what our audience here say. But there are only 10 votes, which I'm surprised. I thought there are more than us here, yeah. But given the 10 votes, 40% says that we are looking at resetting the playing field to innovate. 10% about consolidating resources and offerings to clients. 50% is talking about upskilling talents for longer term, which is also resonating what Hugh mentioned just now. And nobody so far says that we don't know, we don't know what is going to happen, and we don't know whether we're going to survive. No, I'm really very encouraged by this poll. And I think we need to continue to look forward to what we can do and make full use of the opportunities. Maybe this is also the time where we can switch to Munira, since you are online already. Yeah,
Okay.
so this whole crisis, yeah, it really has seen the GBS industry adapting itself and transforming itself to make sure that operations are continued. What do you think are some of the medium to long-term dimensions which leaders in this industry need to consider? It could be business model, it could be offerings, it could be operational changes that are required, or something else altogether. Could you share with us some views on that? And then we would also ask Anthony for any additional inputs if there is.
Sure, Caroline. I guess it's hovering around the risk around centralization, right? There's clear-cut differentiations between the definition of centralized locations versus centralized organizational structures. So for companies or outsourcing companies, or likewise for the GBS operations, most of our current model has always been over-reliant on one global location. So I would think now, multi-locations will become a strategy moving forward, to continue with this GBS operations itself here, right? Now, the second key thing that I probably see in the GBS as well as the BPO industry moving forward, it's we need to leverage on technology, right? Robotics, AIs, digitalizations, automations needs to happen to move towards what we call digital workforce, rather than totally dependent on the people aspect of it. Because this is in a way helps to drive your costs as well as resilience in the event there is another similar COVID disaster that's going to impact, globally itself. So the other thing, of course, is there will be still pressure to actually cost management will continue to play a lot of pressure in a lot of companies. So that needs to be put into focus. And the other thing that I probably see is really about the need to have that tech-enabled operating models. It has been proven that working from home, it's now not only an option, right? It is now the new norms of how people operate, and it's now acceptable in this context itself here. So we need to have better enabled operating model that supports this virtual aspect of how we operate, and taking care of the data privacy and data security to ensure that the clients are comfortable with the data as security aspect of it. And I do see that we need to have a more robust BCP planning. Before it was more on 1-2 sites, but now we're talking about multiple sites, which is being impacted in this case here, right? So those are some of the things that I'll see needs to be needs changes and needs focus. Not forgetting the HR component aspect of it, right? So the HR policies needs to be able to support professional gig workers. We have to make sure that the culture is ready to be able also to support contingent workers, and flexi hours and flexi work will be exciting to see how this will transform.
Thank you, Munira. It sounds like you have covered, the whole business model, right? From centralization to decentralization, robotics, AI, cost management, tech-enabled operating model, which includes data security, BCP multi-sites, as well as HR policies that covers flexibility, contingent workers, and things like that. Wow, so much to take in.
That's what we are doing now. No choice to stay relevant, to stay resilient. Yeah.
Yes, and I've read somewhere that we should actually be expecting this. This pandemic is not a one-off. It's going to come back in a different virus, a different form. So I think it's better late than never, to get started planning on this. So thank you for that input. Anthony, anything that you would like to add to that, Anthony?
Yeah, now I understand why when Munira wanted to speak, she wanted to cover everything.
Okay, I better shut up.
No, just joking. But let me give another practical perspective to what she has already highlighted. I think she has highlighted a very key set of, I would say, bankable issues that most companies should be aware of post-COVID. Yeah. So there is, what I'm going to share with you now is there's nothing called post-COVID. It's be comfortable with COVID. So I'm going to redefine the concept. It's not going to go away. It's going to be there for another 2 to 3 years or whatever period of time. Like any flu, it's going to be there in a different form. So the point I would like to make sure that everybody gets used to it, live, of course, protecting yourself with PPE and all the requirements will be the new format of taking care of yourself. Now that's one. Secondly, of course, that means safety, health, and so on. Yeah. The second one is laws, regulation, and policy. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is because, for example, our SOXO covers us only in the house after we step out of the house. But imagine my entire Munira's team is working from, for example, from home. So what happens if something happens, you slip and you fall down? Who covers you? Right? So, I mean, I'm giving a practical perspective, not intended to anyone, but the laws need to update itself with the current situation. Likewise, the policies of companies need to update itself to be more relevant to allow people to work from home, right? So COVID-19 is here to stay, but how do you look at it from a biz perspective, model perspective, a policy perspective, law perspective? Now, next comes what is the idea of automation and AI? Where do you use it, right? Now, everyone is talking about automation and AI, but where's the practicality? But if you allow people to work from home, you give a lot of flexibility already. Anywhere. So you need automation for that, right? Simple. AI, because you need to ensure you have the data, you need to have the information readily available. And how do you make sure you contain the knowledge process or capture the knowledge process? All right. And the final thought I want to leave it is with the businesses to be prepared for the next crisis. So in this crisis, we were unprepared, we were caught off guard. I think yesterday they were telling me that literally 3 trillion of the world's wealth has been wiped out in 45 days. So this is going to happen. So if you need to sustain, and sustain is of course society, environment, and health, and also make sure that as a business, if employers are taken care, employees are taken care. So you need to make sure you have your self-guarding bundle of information, intelligence, and preparation kit that is going to be useful for you to prepare for the next crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. So there are things to add on, Anthony. There you go. Yes, so you talked about being comfortable with the new normal, basically. It's not going to go away. This is going to be it. And in fact, be prepared for the next, about flexibility and policies and laws, right? We are still quite traditional in definitions and in applications of it. So I think the organizations all have to relook at this, and of course the government needs to relook at some of this.
We are still in 1955, by the way.
I know what you're referring to there.
No pun intended.
There is a question, yes, there is a question from Michael Warren on the chat group that I'd just like to address to both Munira and Anthony at this point, right? Ministry just said today all foreign workers must be tested for COVID-19 and the employers will bear the cost. How many foreigners operate in the Malaysian GBS sector, and how will they be impacted by the new testing and control requirements? Any thoughts?
Ladies first.
I shall direct this question to
I think this is a better way to respond right now. Let Munira take up, and then I will follow. Okay.
Yeah, maybe Hugh can share with us this. This is news.
Ministry,
this is
the news.
This is
So back to gentlemen taking the lead.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to say that this is news to me as well.
Yeah.
What I've just read is I'm not sure whether it's referring to the construction industry, because they were talking about the construction industry having a lot of foreigners. We need to check further as to the mechanism of getting this tested, whether they get tested in the Perkeso clinics, and how much would that cost, and what would the mechanism be? Because as what mentioned, are we asking for all these foreign workers to crowd in the Perkeso clinic? Then the social distancing concept will not be applied in this case. That will probably make it worse. So we need to find out a bit more on this latest ruling itself.
Yeah, I think I'll just add on to it. If it is a new ruling and we just need to make sure, I think Michael, knowing Michael's perspective, I think it's something important for us to cover if it's going to come to GBS as well. So if it is starting with the construction workers, I think, Hugh, we may need to expect it to coming to the foreign worker expat category. So probably we need to prepare for it. We may not have the right answer right now, but once we have it, I think we should be able to share it back with the industry.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm just going to switch gear a little bit here. There are some more questions that are coming up, but I'm just going to switch gear a little bit to looking at, what we have spoken about so far, which is all these things that we need to be prepared for. Now, switching gear because we have been preparing for something else, right? We have been preparing for industry revolution 4.0 is talk non-stop every day. And then suddenly that, I'm not sure, did that just flew out of the window and all we're talking about is COVID-19? Yeah, so I'd like to invite Lina perhaps to jump into this conversation, because this is where the supply of our talents are coming from, right? And how does that, how does this change actually impact the education and the bringing up of our young people and our talents? The switch from Industry 4.0 to these changes that we are speaking about, Lina.
I don't see it as a change or looking at a different direction, I think it's actually in the same direction. And I'm so glad we spoke about IR 4.0, right? So if we hadn't started on IR 4.0, how would we have been able to move our workforce and our teaching into an online mode? And so in INTI, we started on e-learning in 2014. First, what we did was we introduced what the concept of e-learning was. E-learning is not turning on a video and recording yourself teaching, right? E-learning is basically how do you engage using e-tools, right? So, and we put in things like blogs, we put things like off of our learning management system, exactly what we're doing right now, like Microsoft Teams, but in a way where it was safe for students. We called it Blackboard Collaborate, right? So we had students do blogs, we had students do wikis, and we had our teachers do quizzes, do games. We even went all the way to teach circuits for mechanical engineering and civil engineering by creating a game that lasts us an entire semester, where you actually have to unlock level by level by gaining points. You can't unlock the next level if you don't learn the stuff, right? So this was our move towards IR 4.0. But I'll say this, thank goodness we did that, because at the speed that MCO came, we had 20 hours. We were in the middle of our final exams. Yeah. So, but within a week, we had to change 700 final exam courses into alternative assessments, get them moderated, and launched to all our students. If we hadn't stressed IR 4.0, our staff would not have been able to cope. Neither would our students have been able to, understand, right? So what I'll say is that IR 4.0 is the way. Even today, look, we are actually having this conversation and having this webinar virtually, and everybody's at home. Imagine if this happened 20 years ago, there would be no such seminar. If this happened 20 years ago, we wouldn't be working from home, we'd be starving from home.
Thank you, Lena. So what you're saying is actually in the same direction. And in fact, of course, we are more prepared today than we were in the past. And I think what I hear also, the agility of the conversion at 20 hours, what we all needed to do in 20 hours, was a little bit crazy. But I'm glad to hear that, in terms of the talent supply has already been gearing towards that. Now, that is from educators' perspective. If I may ask Munira, do you see that as well from a demand perspective? Yeah, this is where the balance comes in, right? The demand and supply comes in.
Yeah, I can't wait to answer this question. Well, I really appreciate what Lena has shared. I think it's good to be able to hear from the supply side, that there are certainly efforts that has been undertaken to prepare our workforce for IR 4.0, right? But I think from a business angle, today certainly we can feel that there is an existing mismatch between existing workforce and what we want, and in terms of to deliver not just local domestic market, but to deliver what the global market requires in this case here. Now, with COVID-19, everything got accelerated, and now the gap essentially is even wider. So it's very concerning from a business angle, because as we begin to start accelerating our implementation of technology and automation into our environment, the readily available workforce may not be there, right? But at the same time, I do see this as an opportunity. I think my wish list primarily would be top important would be really around the need to align all the stakeholders now to start thinking through the whole ecosystems needs to align in terms of our one very specific agenda. It's how do we deal with the increasing unemployment in the market today, all right? Because we're seeing everyday announcements around retrenchment. People are being retrenched, people are being out of a job. But then how do we skill these people which already have some experience It's good to see that most of the people who are being retrenched are, already in the service sector. So reskilling them back into the GBS primary in the contact center space, which is a skill that it's readily and easily trainable, that essentially will help. But it really requires collaborations with the government, the industry players, key associations to align the curriculum and making sure that we are able to do it fast.
Right. Lena,
Yeah.
perhaps a word from you on how can the accelerated business conditions requires an acceleration of integration of what I'm hearing. Are there anything that perhaps is helpful, on the supply side that, because here I have 3 panelists who are on the demand side, and it's a bit unfair for you, I realize that. So this is where, speak, and perhaps we have willing hands, being raised to say, how can we accelerate as the industry, as the business, to contribute to the talent upskilling that we need?
That's a fantastic question, and I thought you'd never ask. So this is where I will say that to my esteemed panelists, we always believe in industry, academia, and government working together, 3 parties coming together to ensure that our young people are actually going to be the next future-proof workforce, right? So, and we really invite members of industry to come in and work with us. And I'll give a very concrete example. So Automation Anywhere, we started off with Automation Anywhere when I wanted to put bots in my back office, right? And we loved Automation Anywhere. So we went and spoke to them. We said that, how are you getting the coders out into the ecosystem in Malaysia, right? Because to be very frank, my first Automation Anywhere coder was in Argentina, right? I contracted him because it was slightly cheaper to do so in Argentina. We worked remotely, right? So, but when we went and spoke to Automation Anywhere, we found out that most of the Malaysian coders are actually foreigners, right? So we went to them and said that, why can't we train? And they had a program, but the nearest center of excellence for education was actually in NUS. So we said that we want a board lab with a center of excellence. And we worked together and it came together pretty fast. So last year we launched our board lab. And this year in February, we graduated the first 10 Malaysian coders students, right? So this is what I mean by industry, academia working together, right? And where the government comes in, I think, is in terms of, I'll pick up what Anthony said, 1955. I think the government has been brilliant in the way they've tried to engage us through this whole MCO period. And, I think that everybody wants the best for the nation and for our young people, but it's just that industry moves so fast, right? So I think we need the same sort of agility, and with technology, you're always playing catch up. So we need the government to also run the same way in terms of the catch up, right? I think what they are trying to do is to protect, to make sure that we give quality to the students. But I think sometimes you have to balance protecting versus running forward, right? So I'll give a little, so with that, volunteers accepted, super accepted.
Thank you, Lena. And I think you brought up a good point about government, and I'm not sure if Hugh wants to jump in here, but I think it's always a balance, right? You're trying to, it's the same discussion about the CMCO right now, right? It's a toss-up. It's about life and economy. It's hard to balance that too, but I think we really need to work together. And there are a lot of questions that I see in the chat group right now, wondering, where do we focus? Do we focus on the people? Do we focus on the process? Do we focus on the technology? Because there's so many things that we want to focus on. And like I think what Munira spoke about earlier, that Anthony said, everything we are trying to do right now. So perhaps, it's also good to hear it. We actually have a poll on something like this, But before we go into the poll, which will ask our audience here, what do you need the most in terms of help? Yeah. Just 1 minute before that, I would just like to maybe ask you if you would like to jump in at this time about how the government can also help in tying the demand and supply, the two ends here together. Hugh?
Mute. He's on mute.
You're still muted, Hugh. Good.
Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, taking the cue from what both Munira and Lina have mentioned, I think what MDEC is doing right now immediately is to create jobs. And of course, as what we have shared earlier, that there are a lot of potential redundancy if you have not started yet, but we have seen some companies started retrenching, especially from the hospitality or services industry. And a lot of this talent are proficient in English, are very service-oriented, exactly the type of talent that is required for the GBS industry. We have also mentioned that the GBS industry has been very resilient. And instead of seeing reducing demand, we are actually seeing increasing demand for GBS services. So that's positive for the industry in that sense. But of course, we do recognize that once we bring all these jobs for the talent, we need to reskill them and within a short period of time to upskill them as well for the future of work. Yeah, we do see technology adoption coming in at a faster pace post this pandemic or even post this MCO if we see that pandemic will continue one way or another. So that is something that on MDEC side, we are reaching out to as many parties as possible to discuss and collaborate on this matter. And party including even the HRDF, who is very supportive and looking at some of the programs that we have. So in this sense, I'm actually tilting the balance of it, supporting Lina from the supply side. That's something that MDEC is actually doing. So we do welcome any more ideas in terms of scaling all this skill that is required in a bigger way for Malaysians.
Thank you, Hugh. There's one more question for you. Anthony, just give me 1 second here, just for Hugh to take on this question about contact center. Are we still positioning Malaysia as a destination for contact centers? Be it primary or secondary, what sort of industry and quality of jobs are in the pipeline that you alluded to potential investors? And the question is coming from Imran.
Okay, you use the right word. The word here is contact center. What started off as call center prior to this, where we have been very proficient in multiple languages because of what Malaysians naturally are, has actually positioned Malaysia in the advantage position to have call centers here. But with the advent of technology, a lot of call centers have actually moved into contact center. And with the adoption of big data, with the adoption of chatbot, and of course, artificial intelligence, these are naturally the type of jobs that we want to create here in Malaysia. So in short, yes, we are supportive of companies who want to set up contact center operation here with high level adoption in terms of digital technology.
Thank you, Hugh. And Anthony, yes, would you like to jump into this demand and supply conversation?
Yes, I just wanted to see, sometimes when you're on the cusp of demand and supply, how do you balance it, right? So, of course, in the call, we have a good balance, both, of course, the gender as well as in the sense the supply and demand side. But the point I wanted to highlight was
I think we may have lost Anthony for a couple of seconds there.
His perspective. Hello?
Yes, you're back, Anthony.
Okay, sorry, I don't know. I went into space, I think, for a second. So I was saying, industry, government, and institution, right? So we need all this to be bridged. And I must say something interesting happened. Last week, PCOM, the National Tech Association, OM, the GBS Association, was invited by HRDF and MOHR together with MDEC for an industry collaboration call. And that was the starting point where I felt that we are aligning industry, again, from a demand side, supply from an from a graduate or a university side, but also supply from the market, because you have impacted employees out there. And how do we bring all of them together with the upskilling perspective? So, and I think we are in a good position right now to bring this together. But you're right, we need to move this together and fast as we get through this crisis right now.
Thank you, Anthony, for sharing that. So there is hope. It's coming together again. Even that is being accelerated, which is good. Yeah, which is good. Maybe what we can do is let us open up the polls right now, Justin, to ask, what do you need the most for the business in the short term to overcome the challenges, right? And this is also together with some of the questions that was in the chat box here about what should the focus be. So this question that we are opening up, is it business modeling consultation that you need? Is that the help that you need? Is it financial support from the government and the ecosystem in general? Is it human capital enhancements, or is it process and system improvement? So what do you need? Right, the polls are coming in, and we are seeing, not surprising, that at this time, is financial support is being highlighted.
Carolyn, I think you're on mute.
Carolyn, we can't hear you. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm actually going to move on. We have 8 votes so far, and it's siding on financial support. I think that's what is most required. But I think not far behind, and I'm sure if we leave this poll on, it will continue to change, is process and system improvements, because I think we see that that is a backbone to what we are doing today, right? A lot of things are enabled today because we are able to work from home, and that is only possible if you have the right processes and systems in place. So perhaps with that, yes.
Sorry, can I just maybe jump in to share like how I view this question?
Sure.
So for my organization, I've chunked it into 4 buckets, right? So number 1 would be to protect. So protect your current earnings, whatever earning streams you have. The other one is to mitigate in the sense that mitigate the loss of new business. And for us as an education institution, our cycles are, every year students will leave school at a certain time and then they'll come into your organization, right? So when I talk about mitigate, is how do you mitigate the student stream, the new stream of income coming in, mitigate so that you don't lose it, right? But the other piece then is how do you manage expenses, right? Because if you don't manage expenses, then there is in some ways a sustainability question, right? And the fourth one to me is how do you engage? And when I talk about engage, it means like, how do you work with your industry groups to engage with the government? So like groups like this, right, engaging with MDEC. But I think it's not only MDEC that we need to engage with. There are multiple agencies that we need to engage with, right? So that's how I would answer that question. So yeah, in other words, you've got to bucket them and do all of them, because like everything else, there has got to be a balance. Right? If you focus just on cutting expenses and managing your expenses, but you don't focus on the top line, there is nothing left to cut after some time, right? Hopefully that helps a little.
Thank you. And I think together with that is, I see some earlier questions with regards to process and systems. And one particular question, again, coming from Imran, is actually asked to Mr. Hugh here about technological proliferation on contact center roles, like RPA chatbots, right? And therefore, there will be lesser demand on people. So any take on that, Hugh? Because this is on process, right? So when there are process improvements and system improvements, therefore, we may need less people. What do you think about that?
Sure. I think I'll break that answer into two portions. First of all, is in the current situation where we have high unemployment, right? The main objective is to create jobs. And I suppose Malaysians, just like any other citizens in the world, in the current situation, I don't think we'll be very choosy in terms of the kind of jobs that we can that we will have, right? It's more tie us over during this period of time. And I also did mention that we need to go on upskilling almost immediately once we have created the jobs. So all this to embrace or prepare ourselves for future of work, right? So this is where the contact center, the technological adoption comes into the picture, right? Once we go beyond the call center into a contact center, there are two parts to that. One is it allows us to provide better service to the people that we are talking to from a contact center operation perspective. When you're talking to a client, with the AI and the big data that we have, it will actually help us to be able to understand the client on the fly, talk to them to be able to understand better on the fly, to be able to engage in a more meaningful conversation as the system are smart enough to start pulling out information that's relevant to the conversation. That's one. Second is we do not see contact center as just answering calls, answering emails. It can actually be nurtured up the value chain to be an analytical center, right? All these incoming calls and incoming inquiries from the client can be analyzed, right? And it can actually help the product development of the organization once you know the kind of inquiry that is coming in. Whether it's inquiry, whether it's complaints, all these are useful data for the organization that's running the contact center. So we see that as up the value chain from that perspective. Eventually, it can actually be a research and development center in terms of whether it's new product or policies for the organization. So these are the additional job, up the value chain job that we see to be the next stage of the contact center.
Right. Thank you, Hugh. So what you're saying is, yes, with this additional technology support, there would be a change rather than a reduction of jobs. It's a shift. It's a shift to higher value added services that the contact centers will be delivering.
Exactly, yes.
Thank you. And you know, with that, perhaps again coming back to the demand and supply question, is on Lina's side. I think there's a question specifically asking, you know, is INTI the only university running a full-fledged GBS in Malaysia? Any information that do you know whether INTI is the only one?
As far as I know, we are the only one. And, but I could be wrong. But in the first place, most education institutions are not part of a group, right? So we are a group. We are 20 companies and 6 campuses, right? So 6 individual institutions, which allows us to have that sort of demand for GBS. But we also think that having a GBS is one of the most efficient ways because we also maintain a project team that helps us drive RPA adoption. We also have a contact center as well, right? But our contact center, to Hugh's point, it doesn't just answer calls. What it does is, it started out that way, but then it's gone now to actually nurture leads for us, right? So it's become more of a sales function. So that's the evolution. And we have put chatbots in, but the chatbots didn't take away anyone's job. It allowed us to do a lot more with the same body of people.
Together with that, Lina, just want to ask you another question that was raised by Jose Ravi. Globalization and expanding our business to countries abroad is inevitable. What are your views on the role of communication and language abilities of our young workforce in meeting this global demand?
So when I joined education, one of the reasons why I joined education was that I wanted to build the next generation of students who could communicate and collaborate, right? And also think creatively, because I put it this way, if you can do all 3 of that, you'll never really fear for your job, right? So, and that's something that in INTI we try to push very hard, but we're dealing with young people here. They don't want you to preach to them. The minute you preach to them, everybody shuts down, right? So for us, it's how do you cleverly teach communication, collaboration, you know, in a way where they don't realize that they're practicing the skills as they learn their subjects, right? So that's why we teach our teachers to do alternative assessments, because when you do a wiki together, then you are learning how to work together. Because at the back end of our system, if the four of us are in a group and I Skype off, the teacher actually is able to go into the analytics and look at the fact that the four of us built a wiki, but I didn't actually do very much. I wrote on the three of you, right? So, but that very soon teaches the students that, hey, in life, you really need to learn how to collaborate, right? And communicating for us, in the past, communication was already tough enough, but right now we're talking about communication across a digital platform, right? So that's one of the reasons why in INTI, we let you have alternative assessments where you make a video, because we think that we're trying to teach the students how to communicate through a digital divide. That's also the reason why we have things like Blackboard Collaborate, where you're essentially doing Microsoft Teams-like work, again, across a digital platform.
So,
So that's how we...
So to ask you, so you're saying preach to the young people without preaching, yeah? Okay.
Yes. No one listens to you if you preach.
Yes. So do you think, from a scale of 1 to 10, have you converted them? Because you're preaching without preaching, right? So from a scale of 1 to 10, going back to Jose's question on communication and language abilities, how would you rate, Malaysian, our young workforce, in this area, communication and language? 1 to 10, 10 being the best. We are the most agile and the most flexible and articulate. Yeah. How would you rate us?
Okay, so what I'll say is that we're definitely not a 10, right? But I think that this is again where industry and academia also can work together. So because that's a very young person on the line, okay? Communicating, so perfect timing. So yeah, so the thing is that I think as traditionally as Asians and in our traditional school environment, we've taught in a one-way manner, right? I'm the teacher, I talk to you, you don't talk back to me, right? So I think that has got to change. But coming into university and trying to change it at university is really late in the game. In many countries, you start when you are in primary school, right? So this is something that we all need to work together with the government to make sure that, we are actually going down, all the way down back to when student starts in primary school, right? But certainly whatever we can do in university, we will. And I'll also give an example of one of the things that INTI does. So every student who does an undergraduate course with us needs to do a design thinking course. And we don't allow our teachers to mentor the course. We require industry partners to mentor the course. And, I've been told by a lot of industry partners, the first time the students come together, the emails that they write, the way they put things across, it's really amateurish. But by the time they get to do the final presentation, there's so much, they get what is actually needed. They may not be supremely good, but they get it, right? So I think this is what we need to give to our people, our young people, right? And we can only do this if everyone works together. I'll also have this little thing to say about parents. Asian parents think that when their child gets an A, that they get an A. Can we please stop doing that? It's your child's report card, it's not your report card. Please. So
thank you. Thank you, Lina. I think we are all learning. I'm a parent myself. We are all learning not to associate our kids with ourselves that much. But I'm just going to switch to Munira for a bit here to ask her a question that came up earlier. Is do you foresee, and then we will move on to Anthony as well. Do you foresee M&A happening post COVID-19 among GBS companies in order to maintain sustainability and competitiveness? And this question is coming from Jusri Ong. Yeah. So, Munira, are you online?
Yes, I am. I think directionally, strategically, that's the right way to go. I use the word smart partnering as a way to actually build and strengthen our capabilities. And with that extended capabilities, we are more ready to embrace the demands as well as the opportunities that we've shared earlier part of the webinar. So I would think that this would be the game moving forward so that we become stronger. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Munira.
Yeah.
Anthony, would you like to chime in as well as
Sure.
take another question? After that point is how do we compete then, because I see it as associated. There's a question in the chat group. How do we compete in the growing demand, because it's booming in the Philippines, in India. So what can you recommend that we do besides M&A, right? What other things is there is required in order for Malaysia to be more competitive? And that question came from Jess. Anthony,
Okay.
over to you.
All right. Can you hear me? Check.
Yes, but we can't see you, Anthony.
Okay. It's interesting because my camera is on.
Thank you. We see you
Okay,
now.
good. Right. So I was in invisible mode and then physical mode now. All right. So quickly, to connect with the previous question from Jusri, I think it's a very strategic question. I'm not going to call it the new normal, but I'm going to call it the next normal. So once the new normal is done, I'm sorry I have to come up with all of these terminologies. So because everybody seems to be using everything. So the next normal is about convergence of technologies and mergence of activities of organizations that needs to come together to stay competitive, right? So you have the impact that has taken place. Now there's a financial impact, there is a, of course, health impact, there is a industry impact, there's an employment impact. All of this is going on right now. Now companies are going to be facing that at different phases of, if they're deep pocketed, maybe they can survive through this. If they are not, they need to be having, like what Munira pointed out, smart partnerships that can help the initial stages of working together, using technology, enabling themselves and moving forward. And of course, the next phase or the next normal is for them to consider M&A, so that they can work with like-minded, like-strategic, but for the next normal, right? So that's where they are building their ground or laying their foundation for their next new competitiveness. Now, to move on to the next part of the question, what you asked, I think the industry itself, BPO and GBS side, both are going through a lot of revolution, right? Revolution now. And when they are going through this, automation and AI is part of it. And I think enough has been said about bots being in, it's already the next normal, having bots and functioning it without replacing, but at the same time upskilling your talent and enhancing their capabilities to meet the new demands of clients. The new demands of our clients are going to change drastically, right? So we know that they have shifted, the customers have shifted, the world has shifted, but from a provider perspective and a user perspective, how do we look at enabling these two platforms or bridging these two that's happening right now and making sure that's going to happen that way, move forward. So be open to the new partnership, I would say, which also means you need to be reassuring to your stakeholders. Because everyone is very concerned. Stakeholders are very concerned what's happening if I'm a worker, if I'm a shareholder, if I'm an investor. So many things are going on. So I think we need to reassure them. We also need to be able to adapt the business as we go through with the new business model. So hence the reason these things are going to be chock-a-blocks, I would say, step by step. I'm not saying it's puzzles, but it's one step at a time. They have to go through this, and perhaps best done in a phase-by-phase approach. Right? Like I don't know whether 3-year plans work anymore, by the way. So it's going to be 6 months plans or 9 months plans or 12 months plans. But you have to start putting it up into phase by phase. Otherwise, you're going to be burning out.
Well said, well said. And Munira, what do you think about the phases and the planning, because, the life has suddenly sped up a lot, 3 years seems a little bit far, we are living almost sometimes day by day. Any advice in terms of, how should we plan? What are the phases that we should be looking at? What's the duration that we potentially can look at?
Well, our 5 years plans has now become a 5 days plan. That's for sure, right? So I must continue to stress that there's a huge opportunities to drive value via the digital platforms. So the digital now has become a primary, if not the only way to be able to stay relevant in the marketplace. So I think there need to be some focus and effort, some resources that is dedicated to be able for you to embrace these new platforms. I need to also kind of say that cost management will still continue to become a priority for a lot of people. So you need to have creative ways of how you're going to deliver your service to your clients, and making sure, like I've mentioned earlier, you have to have more enabled operating models, to support the new requirements.
Thank you, Munira. And perhaps the last part of that, connecting to that question, as well as another question that came up, would be focused on Hugh, where there is a question about regional knowledge, right? So Vietnam seems to be moving fast, has opened up faster. So what do you see as Malaysia's competitive edge? And together with that, I'd like to ask, I know we all don't have a crystal ball, like Munira said, 5 years become 5 days, right? So I'm just wondering, maybe Hugh, do you have a crystal ball? Is there any forecast that you can help the industry, have some views on, some data points, some insights? We are all looking forward to that. Hugh, any comments?
Oh, well, I would definitely wish that I have a crystal ball. But having said that, I think we do expect to see gradual increase in the economic or investment activity, barring any further negative development of the pandemic. We all know that this pandemic will be here for quite some time. We need to be prepared for that. But as we know in economy, negativity breeds negativity and positivity breeds positivity. So turnaround will depend on how the country, the people respond to this, not just in Malaysia, but globally, as Malaysia is a trading nation, right? To address the point in terms of Vietnam is coming up fast, yes, definitely Vietnam has been coming up fast in the last 10 years, and Malaysia is also trying to move as fast as we can as well. But different country offers different proposition in that sense. Yeah. From an investment standpoint, we do see picking up activities or interest from China already as we speak. In fact, this started probably more than a month ago, where we know China is ahead of the curve in battling COVID-19. So as early as a month ago, we have already started getting interest from China, who are beginning to look out for market or new market in Southeast Asia, picking up where they left off sometime last year. And we have discussed a lot on GBS. So we know that GBS actually is an industry that we can continue to count on. There are a lot of opportunities here. We do see movement of GBS activities from high cost location due to depressed economy, and Malaysia can be an attractive investment location, though not the cheapest. You mentioned about the Philippines of the world, the India of the world. But from a cost perspective, I think we are very cost effective, and companies need to balance between cost and capability in this sense. Munira was talking about in India, there are companies who are unable to provide support to the BPO industry because the work from home capability is not as great as what we have here in Malaysia. So that is definitely an advantage that we have in Malaysia, positioning Malaysia as the investment destination for GBS in that sense. And of course, US-China trade war is still ongoing. The latest that we see where US is blaming China for this pandemic, and US president have mentioned that tariff may be used as a tool to penalize China. So we see this trade war to be on an ongoing basis and will continue. And while we do not wish for trade war to continue to happen, but then it provides some opportunity for us as well, because China and the US will be looking up to Southeast Asia for more market, and definitely Malaysia is in the right position for that.
Thank you, Hugh. So without a crystal ball, you still provided some positive guidance there, yeah? So it looks like, you know, I mean, all in all, we spoke a lot about the different things from both demand and supply to infrastructure agility. We spoke about RAVE from Anthony about resilience. And at the end of the day, I think Malaysia is where it is in this industry because we were, well, not 100% prepared, but we were that. We were prepared. So now there are pockets of opportunity that we have to be the first to be able to get to it, so that we can actually run, and whether it is Vietnam, whether it's India or wherever it is, I think we have to find our own space and be able to be agile and fast enough to capture that. So that's what we have you know, spoken about throughout. But I thought I would like to just go maybe one round to see if there is any last words of advice, you know, about what is coming up and how do we see this post-COVID for this industry, in the GBS industry. And I believe at the same time, Justin will run some polls at the side. But if we can just go one round, perhaps again, going back to the same order that we started, which is we started with Anthony, you know. So perhaps we can start back with Anthony, and then we can go one round, and we will end with the ladies. The ladies will support the gentlemen. Yes, Anthony, please go ahead.
I can see the new order right now in line with our topic. All right, so hopefully, I'm just hoping that we have kept all the attendees. I think they have C-suite and, you know, top management, senior management, folks on the line, whether they all connected and whether they understand it. But I just want to recap the RAVE again. And the thing is, I'll break it down a bit more clearly. I'm talking a little bit more about making sure your strategic workforce planning is in line, or maybe we call it remote workforce planning, or the new word is called digital workforce, right? So let's be prepared to that new term that we will be addressing and applying based on the requirement, digital workforce, number one. Number two, crisis response. Every organization has to redefine, restructure, realign, and update this if you don't have. If you're a micro, if you're a SME, if you're a mid-size, if you're a large, any type of organization, it is applicable for you to have a crisis response action. Yeah. Number three, I think Munira touched on it. Business owners and corporate need finance, and you need to have sustainability in the finance. And if you're not going to have sufficient financial resources, you are unable to manage the future unexpected situation. All right. The last point, I think it's about technology. Now, I believe it is a lifeline now. So you have to make sure that you have sufficient bandwidth, be it on cloud, speed, broadband, accessibility for people to work from anywhere. I think this is by itself said, I mean, as part of default. If I were to press default button, this is going to be default for everyone. Yeah. And finally, don't forget that, like you, your suppliers, your vendors, your partners are equally important. Without them, you would not be where you are today. So it's important for us to make sure we stay connected with them, be it a university you're partnering with for talent, be it a government you're partnering for stimulus, be it an association you're partnering for networking, and be it an agency where you are licensed to get your MSc status and drive. You need to make sure all your partners are closer than ever before. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. And I'd like to invite Mr. Hugh, you know, to have a conclusion. But of course, you know, before we end, we would also like to invite Mr. Chia Kok Hung for his closing remarks. But I'd like to invite first these two gentlemen, and then we will move on to Munira and Lina before we come to Mr. Chia for his closing remarks. Yes, Hugh.
Sure. I think in addition to what has been shared earlier, a very simple message. We are not out of the woods yet from a pandemic perspective. Continue to work from home as much as possible. Keep that option open continuously and plan your operations to continue to leverage on that. We also have discussed that there are opportunities for GBS industry out there. Go for it. Come and talk to us in MDEC on how we can possibly support. And remember, digitalization.
Thank you, Hugh. And I think I hear that consistent message about collaboration and partnership. This is the time to hold them even closer. Yeah, don't forget. Yeah. Munira, would you like to chime in?
Well, I guess from my perspective, for a lot of business, staying relevant and building a sustainable business model, it's ultimate at this point. So we need to start focusing on building internal capabilities, either from an IT, people, and processes aspect of it, and not forgetting the mindset aspect of the workforce. Yeah. But I would like to also reinforce that connecting on a personal level and instilling empathy with the workforce is very important at this stage, especially now that people are working remotely and there's a lot of uncertainty out in the market. So that compassion, that humanity needs to come into play, and balancing it with the business angle aspect of it. So we really need to reinvent the way we serve our customers. We need to rethink how and where we work, I think, and more importantly, re-image our roles as leaders. It has to change, and that's probably what I would think are some of the key takeaways here.
Thank you, Munira. It's I think we have been talking a lot about from customer experience to employee experience, but this is really the test, right? You can talk all you want to talk about, but if there is no authentic leadership at this time, whatever you say about experience, employee experience, it's just talk, right? So thank you for bringing that up. That's very much needed, to wrap that up. So thank you, Munira, for bringing that up. And Lina, over to you, Lina.
I guess, it's how do you engage every member of your team, to face this together. When we talk about automation, when we talk about managing expenses, one way of managing expenses is through automation. But at a time when people fear for their jobs, how do you give them the assurance that going that route is going to ensure that we survive and not that they will lose their jobs, right? And no leader will know everything. How do you get every member of your team who understands what they do better than we do, right, to come and join to basically make the place a much stronger place when eventually they find a vaccine will be so much stronger. But before they find a vaccine, we'll be able to continue and continue well. So I think that's how that to me is the heart of the matter. You can't do things alone.
Thank you, Lina. You see how beautiful it wraps up that, with all the AI and technology that we are talking about, it ends up with humanity at the end of the day, right? This is a test of our humanity as we come together during this time. So, this is also an opportunity that is created by OM and by MDEC. So I also like to, on behalf of all the panelists, thank Mr. Chia Kok Hong as the chairman of OM, and Raymond Devadas, and also Justine, of course, who is working on the background as the executive director of PCOM, for bringing us together in this humanity, this collective wisdom and experiences as we come together. And of course, to thank all the participants who are participating from your homes or from your offices, I'm not sure. So thank you for that. So perhaps Mr. Chia, if I would like to invite you here for your closing remarks for this session that we have together. Is Mr. Chia online, Mr. Chia Kok Hong?
Yes, Caroline, I'm on. But
thank you. Over to you.
Yes, thank you. I hope I can't turn on the video somehow.
Turn it on. You go ahead, Mr. Chia.
Okay, Justin. Okay, thank you, Caroline, for the well done coordination. It's not easy because the panelists that you have is, I think some of them are the warlord. They are very good in the area that they are. It's not easy to harmonize the talk. Yeah. And thank you for my co-organizing chair, Raymond, for this well-organized, and Justin. And come back, of course, the panelists as well. And I just want to have a quick summary. And the title, The New World Order Post-COVID-19. I think, Raymond, I think we should change it to the New World Order Intermittent COVID-19 or Intermittent MCO. I mean, all of us should believe the COVID-19 will be coexist with us until the vaccine has to be found. Yeah, hopefully by end of this year. And thank you so much for all the positive. And it seems that none of you portray, or none of you really say something about the negativism, the pessimism. I cheers you up. And in the business, some of you really really thought about cash is king. Dato' Muni, you must agree with me. So without cash, the business will not run, right? As an entrepreneur by yourself. And hopefully every one of us here can learn something from today's session. And when this, in Chinese, we always say it's a 危机, right? So when there's a threat, there always is opportunity. And I come from a group, two big groups. One is in Japan, another, of course, is a local conglomerates. And from the strategic hot topic conversation, we are not talking about, we are much talking about the new opportunity, new collaboration, and new working model, new business model. For example, this morning, we just have a phone call with our group president. He's talking about, how can we turn the offline to online? I think you must understand when I say the offline mall to online mall, right? So for Lina will be the offline learning to the online e-learning, in which Indy did it very well, right? So please continue for the soul searching, right? I want to quote what Dato' Idris Jala shared with us.
Can you turn on your video now? You can turn on.
I try. I'm not sure why. Never mind. Justin, never mind. It's okay. Yeah. So this is a quote from Dato' Sri Idris Jala. I thought I want to share with you all. Wisdom is a function of experience and reflection. This one I learned from the reason this webinar organized and what he shared with us. I thought it is very relevant to all of us here. And we are the survivor. So the final thing I want to share, please think positively, right? As a human being, there's nothing can stop us. Think about recurrency, about your business model, about your cash management, about your cost management, about your business model management, about your technology, digital transformation, customer experience, and many more. Of course, the whole ecosystem, like that's why this time Hugh was with us. I'm thankful that Hugh has able to answer a lot of hot questions. Is a government policy, academia and industry. Certainly, I'm looking forward for more kind of operationalized kind of conversation. So that some of us can pick like 1, 2, 3, like Juicy pick up something today, good. He asked question, he got answer, very good. Yeah. So, and we might more engage, we would like to engage as an association OM. We would like to engage more with our member. Hang on, I want to qualify, there's no magic, there's no perfect formula to answer, to fit else, because some business problem, challenges, you are the one who know, but to more collaboration, to more open talk, more open discussion, certainly we can find a constructive, or we can find some coherences, concurrences on what's best forward. So with that, I want to thank all. Yeah, thank Caroline again from Litonomics, right? And Dato Muni from Brand, and Lina from Inti, and Anthony from the Personal Carry, of course, is my deputy chair for OM. And then Mr. Hill from MDAC, thank you so much for joining this session. And most importantly, all the participants stay through this webinar. I salute you all, and thank you so much for supporting us, right? And in return, you supported yourself. Thank you. Over back to you, Justin.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Chia. Thank you, Caroline, and all the speakers, Dr. Munira, Anthony Raja, Hugh, as well as Tan Lina for being with us today. And thank you all the participants, as Mr. Chia mentioned. Keep tuned. We will be up with more webinars coming up soon, and also some events. We will share with you in due course. Thank you once again, and see you all.
Thank you,
Take
everybody.
care. Stay home, stay safe.
Thank you.
Stay
Thank
safe,
you.
stay well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.